Climate change has always been a problem and caused many issues, such as global warming. Average global temperature have increased about 1 degree Celsius since 1900 and more since 1970. This threatened in water availability, declining drinking water, decline in irrigation supplies, and disruptions to power supply.
Both natural and human factors have affected the Earth's climate. Emissions of certain gases such as carbon dioxide have led to depletion into the Earth's atmosphere and has affected our climate greatly.
Since the industrial era began, humans have had an increasing effect on climate, particularly by adding billions of tons of heat-trapping greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. Without the greenhouse effect, Earth will be about 30 degrees Celsius colder.
I think climate change is one of the most important and hardest problems that our generation has to face right now. And the reason for that is that we have relied on fossil fuels for so long, and fossil fuels' major byproduct when it's burned is carbon dioxide. And so just in the years since the 1900s and the Industrial Revolution, we've seen an enormous increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which has led to an enormous problem with global climate change. And rising temperatures are leading to rising temperatures in the ocean, which is decreasing plankton populations, which will have an effect on global food chains. And so we're seeing the repercussions of this all throughout the world. We're seeing plants shifting in their home ranges, which is leading to problems like desertification. And so there are far-reaching implications for climate change, and it's something we need to address desperately.
Climate change is real, that human activities are fueling that change, and we must take action to avoid the most devastating consequences of climate change.
I think that the topic of climate change unfortunately has been highly politicized, and therefore a lot of the science has been left out of it and out of the conversations, especially with the media. And so a lot of the information that we get, our sources have been the media, and there isn't a direct relationship between the science and the general population. So we get our information from the media and not the actual science and the scientists. And so we have a hard time wrapping our heads around, we think very, very locally, and if we see things happening that are local, we have a hard time wrapping our head around, well, just because maybe it's colder in this region, then it can't be warmer throughout the entire globe. And conversely, same thing, it's drier here, well, it might actually be more moist over there, but usually the way we like to think about climate change is just using the law of thermodynamics. Light is released, that's energy. And so when we're doing that, when we are taking this sequestered carbon and we are burning it, basically we're just releasing what is stored. We're releasing the stored energy. So we have more severe storms. So climate change, we started talking more climate change instead of global warming, because some areas are impacted differently from these extra energy of the storm surges. Some areas are going to be more subtropic. The subtropics have expanded. But you got to look at that as a whole entire globe and not just what is happening in your zip code. And so it's hard for us to put really life in that kind of perspective. So the more we take the politics out of it and we look at the science, the better we'll be. Also, you really need to learn to read your own information and make your own educated decisions and your own put all this reading together and make your own thoughts out of that, instead of trying to rely on what you hear on the news, or maybe one article that you read could be an opinion article, who knows. So just when we talk about climate change, so much of our opinion is not based on fact, it's based on emotion and media and politics, and we need to put that aside and look at what the science is.
That climate change is a threat to public safety, it's a threat to public health.
In November of 2014, President Barack Obama issued an executive agreement with China to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. We intend on decreasing greenhouse gas emissions to 26 to 28% by the year 2025. China and US are the world's two largest greenhouse gas emitters. This agreement has helped them to come to a compromise to promise to cap carbon pollution in 15 to 20 years. However, the US faces many challenges. Obama is being criticized for simply just making an executive agreement and not going through Congress.
Also, in developing countries like India, there is a population and economic growth, building hundreds of new coal-fired power plants. Global annual emissions by 2030 should stay beneath 30 million metric tons. China and US will emit half of the total. Other countries have to share the remaining 14 million metric tons.
China will install more solar panels than the United States ever in its history. Also, Obama will dictate the average vehicle travel to 54.5 miles per gallon by the year 2025.
In addition, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency proposed emissions limit for existing power plants that would achieve a 30% reduction in carbon pollution by 2030.
How effective this agreement is going to be, I think, has a lot to yet be seen. One of the problems that I'm reminded of is when the Kyoto Protocol was first initiated, the United States was willing to sign, but with a Republican House, it did not get ratified. And so yes, Obama has agreed that we should reduce those emissions, but right now we've just seen with the midterm elections another shift in our representation. So I'm hopeful that this works. One of the reasons why we didn't, one of the reasons that was cited for why we didn't agree to Kyoto was the fact that China wasn't held to the same standards. So hopefully the fact that we're now working with China will negate those issues and we can all agree to get on board.
Can we actually reach our goals of 26 to 28% decrease in carbon emissions? I don't know. And here's many factors will play into that. Depends on industry, depends on, we just had a new election, and so it really depends on a lot of the new policies that come into play, and as the White House has changed, and so many policies are kind of, I guess what starts, it rolls out limits that are, and I guess the regulations, all the regulations on companies and corporations, on state governments, that is set, that starts at Congress. And so since we have a new Congress, we'll see.
So we ask, can we accomplish this goal, President Obama?